Welcome guys to an equipment video, and today I'm going to be comparing three 105-ish gram shafts. We're going to be looking at the Axiom, we're going to be looking at the Dynamic Gold, and we're also going to be looking at the Modus 3. All of these are coming in a stiff shaft, all of these are coming in a 105 gram shaft. Now, will there be any outliers? Will they perform equally? Let's start to have a look at the data. So today's video is going to be broken down into two parts. One, we're going to analyze these numbers, and the second part, I've actually used ChatGPT to suggest 5 talking points for the video. So we're going to be looking at the golf clubs for feel, we're going to be talking about the forgiveness, the aesthetics, we're going to be talking about the launch characteristics, and also the spin rate control or the consistency of the shaft and its ability to deliver spin. So when I do look at data, of course, I want to show you all of the data, and then I want to start deleting some of the data too. So if we're looking at data and we see shots that are going too far to the right, that's going to make the launch angle more likely to be higher and spin more. And if the ball goes to the left, it'll typically have faster ball speed, lower launching and lower spinning. So it can really skew that data just by having some outliers in there. So now I've taken that data, I've deleted the outliers, and I've actually taken 3 shots from each, which give a rough representation of the average shot from all of the golf clubs. So when you look at these shots, they've all got that same kind of profile. They're starting to the right, they're curving to the left. And I think it's fair to use these shots as a good representation of what happened. So when we look in the data, if we're to take the launch angle, we can see that the Modus was not only the highest launching, but it also had the highest descent angle. So the ball's launching high and it's coming down softer. It's going to make the ball stop on the green a little bit quicker. But noticing that it still did a pretty good job of managing the spin rate. So it wasn't the highest launching, highest spinning and softest landing. It was the highest launching, the softest landing, but the spin rate was actually a little bit less than what you'd find in the Dynamic Gold. You'd also notice if you look at the carry distance, there's really not much between them. And that 2 yards of difference between the Axiom and the Modus and the Dynamic Gold can actually come down from the ball speed being a little bit slower on the Axiom. Now, if we do see that Dynamic Gold, in all honesty, it's so close to the Modus in terms of launch angle, spin rate and backspin. I think if you're somebody else, you might test those and you might find that the Dynamic Gold spins more or the Modus spins more, but really it could be down to how you hit it on the day as to which one performs, but they are very close. So when it comes down to 2 shafts that are very close, that's where the second part of the video may be more relevant to you when you start looking at what it feels like. But in terms of launch characteristics and spin performance, those golf clubs actually perform very equal. So maybe there's just one that feels that little bit better in your hands. This one's going to be purely down to preference, because we are really splitting hairs when it comes down to the data. First of all, if we compare the Modus and the Dynamic Gold, you may find that your data is slightly different to mine. You might find that actually you launched the Modus a little bit higher, or you launched the Dynamic Gold a little bit higher, but there's no huge difference between those 2 shafts in the way they perform. Now, there may be a way they change performance in your hands. They kick differently. The weight feels in a different part of the golf club. So you might find that you have a preference that the Dynamic Gold is really easy for you to strike well, but the Modus is a little bit harder work. In terms of the data, we're really splitting hairs. The launch angle, the spin rate, the descent angle is very similar too. But when we start to look at the Axiom, well, boy, that surprised me. Now, we do notice the ball speed's a little bit lower. That could be down to my ball striking. And for that 2 mile an hour that we have lost, that would normally equate to around 4 yards lost in distance. But it was only 2 yards behind, and I would say that is mainly down to the fact that the launch angle was lower, the spin rate is lower, and the land angle is lower. So your ball's going to fly a little bit flatter, and it may roll a little bit more. But we're at a point where we've now got a graphite shaft that has the benefits of graphite, improved feel, but it's producing characteristics that are very in line with what steel are. We're getting very low launch angles, very low spin rates, and a lower peak height. This is a really penetrating shaft. The numbers I wouldn't assume would come from a graphite shaft 5 years ago. So the Axiom is actually very well performing, and if you like the Axiom, you like the look of it, you like the feel of it, there's a lot of benefits, but you're scared that the ball's going to spin up in the air, I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing quite a flat ball flight. But if you do look at the tracer, the Axiom was probably the hardest shaft for me to get on with. Even though it felt great, I just found it took me more shots to try and get repeatable good data. I would not say I'm tired. I would not say my performance had dropped. I just found it a little bit harder for me to hit it on target. And maybe there is still that argument that the graphite shafts are not quite as consistent as steel, but the tolerance of this is so small. If it was down to me to make a choice today, I would probably go for the Modus 105. Not only did it feel pretty easy for me to get good results, but I just enjoyed the way that felt. But there you go. Make use of that data any way you want. I'm not saying my opinion is gospel. Make your own opinion on these shafts. Please do. Don't rely on me. You may be watching this in the US. Go out there and compare these shafts if you have the opportunity to do so. So now we're going to part 2, and I'm going to use AI just to commend 5 talking points about these shafts. So first of all, feel. If I were rating these shafts, which one would I say feels better? There's no dispute. The winner all day for me is going to be the Axiom. It just feels a little bit softer, a little bit kinder. When you misstrike the ball, it behaves better in that it won't vibrate your hands and hurt your wrists. So if it comes down to feel, Axiom wins all day. So now it comes down to forgiveness, and I'd have to go down to the fact that the dynamic gold only took me 10 shots to get that going. When I did hit a bad shot with the dynamic gold, I will admit that the feel was not very nice. And that's what you'd expect from a toe hit in a stiff shaft. And dynamic gold are a little bit firm, not in the category of Project X, but they are a little bit firm feeling. But what I find is it's not the forgiveness in terms of the feel in my hands, but the forgiveness in that when I did hit it wrong, the dynamic gold still managed to get somewhere near to the target. Aesthetics, which one? Well, if you like a black shaft in your iron, it's got to be the Axiom, no doubt about that. Then it's down to personal preference. Would you prefer red markings on your golf shaft? Would you like a gold one with the exclusive words tour issue? I've got to give the award to Axiom. I like the black looking shafts. I also use black headed irons. They look pretty well. Sometimes in a chrome head, maybe the black shaft doesn't look as good, but I will give that award to the Axiom. Launch characteristics. Well, for me, maybe I'm going to look like I'm sitting on the fence. The Modus 105 just sits somewhere in the middle. It's launching pretty well, it's spinning pretty well, and it stays there. But really, the Modus or the Dynamic Gold both perform pretty well for me. Characteristics going to be very personal preference. It's going to matter a lot on what head you are using. Spin rate control, this is a difficult one. So we look at this, and I'm just using the average number. The tolerance on the spin rate on the Dynamic Gold is plus or minus 93. Tolerance of the spin on the Dynamic Gold is very solid. And I think the Dynamic Gold shaft is older than God. And that's credit to how good that shaft is. Yes, it's had many facelifts and slight performance tweaks, but that shaft is very good and it's been around for a long time. That boy is tight. Hey guys, you appreciate the unbiasedness in this video. Plenty more shafts available that I can review. If you have any questions on any shafts, please drop it in the comments and I'll do my best to accommodate.